Thanks for watching Afternoon Live. Do you have trouble staying organized? Do you overreact emotionally when you're upset? Our next guest says trauma from your childhood can have lasting effects that you don't even realize, and she is here to help. We welcome the author of Re-Regulated, Set Your Life Free from Childhood PTSD and the Trauma-Driven Behaviors That Keep You Stuck, Anna Runkle. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Hannah. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Tell me about this term CPSD. What is that, and what are some signs we should be looking for?
Well, PTSD is something a lot of people have heard of, and it's connected in our minds with people who have been in a war or combat. Complex PTSD, or CPTSD, is the kind of PTSD that can come from chronic, ongoing exposure to stress, usually during childhood. So there's a lot of people walking around who have neurological symptoms that are resulting from abuse and neglect in childhood.
Okay, neurological symptoms. That's so interesting. And you understand a bit about this. I understand you began this form of study and helping other people because of some of your own experiences.
Yeah, I grew up in a family that had a lot of alcoholism and a lot of the problems that go with that. And I did the normal things that people do. Oh, yeah, there's me.
Oh, adorable.
I did a lot of the things that people do to change their lives with that, but I had a hard time. Therapy, talking about stuff, taking medication, all of that had a tendency to make me feel worse and not better. And then I found out what did work for me. And I've been working really hard to teach as many people as possible ever since.
That's so interesting, some of the symptoms that we mentioned, just trouble staying organized and maybe overreacting in odd situations. Do you have folks come to you and say, why am I behaving this way?
Yeah, well, I'm a YouTuber. And so I started out about 7 years ago. I made some videos to show these techniques I used that were helping me feel better. It was only about 10 years ago, there was a word for what the symptoms that I'd always had, and it was complex PTSD, and specifically this aspect of it called dysregulation. And people talk about dysregulation a lot, but usually they mean one part of it, which is emotional dysregulation, where we're lashing out, we're overreacting to things. That's the kind that other people notice. But there's a lot of other parts to it where it's hard to focus, remember, we get brain fog, we get numb, we get clumsy, we have a hard time learning sometimes. Everybody's different. They don't all have all the symptoms, but these are some things they didn't know that were associated with early trauma. And it really affects things physically because your nervous system governs everything in your body. So your hormones, your immune system, your vital signs, all of these things can get disrupted because of the way trauma affects the nervous system.
Yeah, so do people need to confront in some way some of their childhood traumas to be able to move forward and get some progress in this re-regulation?
Well, funnily enough, in my method, that's not really the most important thing. Confrontation, exploring, talking about the past. I think everybody does need to talk about what happened at some point, but the solution isn't there in my experience. And there's a lot of evidence that talking about trauma can be very dysregulating. And when you're dysregulating, you can't process information. You can't remember what you talked about. You can't, go home and think about what you just practiced in therapy. So for me, therapy was a very upsetting thing. I would go in very put together and come out 50 minutes later crying, sitting in my car, unable to drive, hands shaking. Because talking about trauma, we now know, activates dysregulation for a lot of people.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And so you've come up with some really easy and accessible solutions and strategies that people can use in their everyday lives?
Yeah, some of it's easy. There are quick fixes you can do, like just giving yourself a sensory experience, like cold water on your hands, hot water on your hands, stomping your feet. I teach a set of techniques I call it the daily practice, and it's a way of expressing yourself without having to talk about what's bothering you, but you write your fearful and resentful thoughts on paper. And this is done twice a day, followed by a super easy meditation to just rest and let your mind put itself back together. And it sounds really simple, but somebody showed this to me 30 years ago when I was, just completely at the end of my rope. And it very quickly helped me turn around and start functioning again.
That's really wonderful. Yeah, simple doesn't always mean easy, but if you can understand and access it, it can be so helpful. And what's it like for you having this YouTube community, being able to share these things that you've learned with so many people in geographically completely different places?
Yeah, all over the world, people are following this. I have about 1 million subscribers across platforms, mostly on YouTube. And it's interesting because we all have symptoms from the same set of symptoms. So it's been really a revelation to so many people. When I put it on YouTube, I thought there might be some people interested because I've been showing people one-on-one for many years, and it was just taking a lot of my time. So many people got back into the comments and said, I can't believe what you just described. That is my whole life. I mean, just like thousands. I get this comment over and over again all day, every day, as people discover that their symptoms are normal, they're not crazy, they're having a very normal response to abnormal circumstances. And that's why I had to write this book, Re-Regulated, is to put it in one place so that the world can have this information. Like, this is what's going on, this is the science behind it, this is what you can do. And the becoming regulated is the foundation. From there, there's a lot of work to get your life together.
Sure.
There's a lot of life problems that build up when you've been living your life dysregulated.
Well, hey, I really appreciate all the work that you're doing and sharing so much with so many people. And thank you for spending some time with us today.
Thank you, Hannah.
The book again is Re-Regulated, and we'll have more information on our website at katu.com. We'll be right back with more Afternoon Live right after this.